100 touchdowns. He has done it in 127 games. Patrick took 128 games. Now, I know what you're asking. Are they including in that 300 that Fugazi receiving touchdown when he threw the ball, someone else caught it, and they lateraled it to him, a play where he somehow got credit for 2 touchdowns? The answer to that question is yes. With that said, it's the record.
Yeah.
Brew. How close is the gap? And I'm going to Brew first here because I know Brew is going to lean on his decades of covering sports and logical reasoning to give this a real answer, not a shock jock answer like you other two jackals might. How close is the gap between Allen and Mahomes?
It's not close at all.
Thank you, Brew.
It is not close at all because obviously we all know Mahomes has the 3 Super Bowls, the 2 MVPs, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, and is firmly in the GOAT conversation. That already, as great as Josh Allen is, he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He may never do all that. That already is enough to put him ahead of Josh.
Well, it's overwhelmingly likely he doesn't.
Doesn't win 3 Super Bowls. Maybe he gets another couple MVPs.
3,
But yeah, the Super Bowl is not likely. So historically, not close. And currently, not close in the other direction, though. I mean, like the last 2, obviously Josh Allen was better last year. Not close. And this year, so far, he has been better. Here's the graphic from dating back to last year. This is just who's playing better currently. This is the last season and this season. I mean, touchdowns, he's got what? Is that 16 more touchdowns? Obviously, fewer turnovers. Everything is better. Completion percentage, Mahomes has him, but passer rating well ahead of him. And Josh is not, we talk about Mahomes' lack of weapons. It's not like Josh has, Stephon Diggs still. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, like he doesn't have these great weapons either, and yet he's been playing. So historically, Mahomes obviously the guy, but recently and currently, Josh is playing better. It's not even close.
Can I ask you a question before you guys go? Would you have, because I would have found it ridiculous if in 2019 someone had said, last year, James Harden was better than Steph Curry. So I give the context, 2018 was when Harden won MVP, and then in the playoffs, for the 4th time, Steph Curry played Harden, and they beat him. And then Steph went on that year to win the championship. You know what I mean? At that point, Steph had 3 championships. Harden had 0. Harden, the MVPs were 2-1 Steph, but Harden had been better lately.
If
for
Steph
you to
were
say the
averaging like 13 points a game, that's the equivalent of what Mahomes is doing with the 91 passer rating or whatever. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Steph was still averaging 24 points a game.
But the question I'm asking is because you just said kind of just as an aside, obviously Josh was better last year. And my question is, how much of that is erased by the playoff game where obviously Patrick was better?
Josh was the MVP.
Yeah, no,
I am taking regular season play into consideration. Obviously, Mahomes was great in that game. They both played well. Mahomes outplayed him close. But I'm looking more at regular season. And Josh has just been better. And again, to your Steph Curry thing, it's not like Mahomes is still putting up these great numbers. So
the gap, there's the Mahomes-Brady gap, and where Brady's clearly better than Mahomes, but that's being closed by Mahomes. So over time, he's getting closer to that, but that exists, and now you've got the same gap with Josh and Mahomes historically, where it's hard to compare the two because of everything, all the great things that Patrick has done. And what's so interesting to me about Josh is in the 4-year period before last year, he was the first guy since Brett Favre to lead the NFL in turnovers and touchdowns. Yeah. First time first time's happened since Brett. And what's impressed me about him is how dramatically he changed that last year and how that's carrying over to this year. So he is progressing as a player, where you could make an argument that Patrick, at least in the regular season, has regressed significantly as a player. Now, in the biggest moments where you want that player to be your guy, it's no comparison. And until Josh can perform in one of those big moments, and ideally in a big moment over Patrick, you can't really have the discussion.
So you and I have talked sports for nearly 20 years together.
Yeah.
We do similar sleight of hand things. Like the Steph Curry, James Harden parallel doesn't work as well for me here because, and this isn't a shock jock take, I think objectively, Josh Allen is right there with Mahomes as a football player. Obviously, the accomplishments of Patrick Mahomes, it's a marathon-like distance between the two, just like it was for Brady and every one of his peers.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that in the era of Tom Brady, when Aaron Rodgers had his 45 touchdowns, 6 interception season, which is arguably the greatest individual season I've ever seen, that in that moment, Aaron Rodgers was better. And you could just do last year. The last 5 years, because the question is, how is the gap between the two players? Since 2020, this is a 1A and 1B situation of quarterbacks. How does it get closer? Because I'll remove the rushing touchdowns, where Josh Allen smokes Mahomes, obviously. The passing yards, virtually identical. Touchdowns, one off. Wins, one off. Playoff wins, obviously in Mahomes' category, but they're first and second in each. Josh Allen is
clearly the second best player.
Correct. And the gap of the talent between the two is not that significant. Obviously, Mahomes has had his number in the postseason. No one can dispute that. He's got the better trophy case. But as a football player, Allen's a close second. He's a close second.
Well, so listen, here's my problem with calling Allen a close second, is you believe Mahomes is the most talented player ever. And you're saying, right?
Yeah, and I believe that Josh Allen is really close. So you think Josh Allen is very close to being the most talented football player of all time? Well, then, so this is where at some point the compliments to me become an insult, an unintentional one, which is we cannot say, we will take the last 2 years as the example, that Patrick has had the better team. He's never in their career, in their runs, had the better defense. But he certainly the last 2 years hasn't had. 2 years ago he had the better defense. That's the only one. But when they won
when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl,
yeah.
correct. But we don't think that Patrick had the better situation the last 2 seasons than Josh, right? Like that's not the argument. The argument is that
I think his defense is. I mean, in the playoffs, certainly the Chiefs' defense is better than the Bills.
Well, hold on.
And a big part of your argument is the playoff. There's no regular season argument.
No, but I guess my point is the Bills' defense gets exposed in the playoffs by Mahomes. Like it's not like it's, and so this is where I get frustrated because we're not obviously the only show doing this topic. I saw Greeny this morning call him some variation of the best player he's ever seen. Colin today said he's the perfect quarterback. And if those are the things, and you are not playing with one arm tied behind your back from an institutional perspective, then at some point the accomplishments have to match it, or it's a personal failing, like we say with James Harden. I don't think it's a personal failing with Josh Allen. I just don't think the gap is as narrow as you guys say. And here's why the
Josh
playoff
has been
stuff.
excellent in the playoffs.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So let's talk about that.
He's never had a guy like Kelsey either.
No doubt. I mean, honestly, other than Tom Brady, nobody has.
But I mean, even close.
I do think it is worth noting that in the playoffs, Josh Allen has beaten. You said he had 7 wins. They have beaten in the wild card round Colts Phillip Rivers, Mac Jones, Skylar Thompson, Mason Rudolph, and rookie Bo Nix. That's 5 of them. And then he has 2 divisional wins over Lamar, one of which was 17-3, where a Lamar pick 6 was the defining moment of the game where Josh didn't play that well. When Josh has played someone in his weight class in the playoffs, young Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes, he's lost them all. The only guy in his weight class he's beaten is Lamar last year.
But he's also been excellent in some of those losses. Because wins are not just a quarterback stat. He has been excellent in some of those losses.
Wins are not just a quarterback stat, but if we are going to elevate a quarterback to, he is one of what you're saying is this close to being the most talented quarterback ever. We're saying the gap between he and a guy who you believe has GOAT potential is small, then at some point you have to put pelts on the wall. Like,
But aren't there a lot of guys who are more talented than Tom Brady? And maybe that hits your ears. Like, there's probably 20 of them, maybe 50 of them.
Yeah,
but he's more accomplished. It's not the same conversation.
And it's more than just talent at the quarterback
right.
position.
I'm not as enamored with talent at that spot. I'm far more enamored with talent at wide receiver or 100-meter dasher than I am quarterback.
And I think when you look at Patrick at his best, it's not even close. But as sort of the trajectory's gone on, Patrick has had a drop off, and Josh has increased or has significantly improved, and that's kind of where we are right now. But you're never going to be able to make the argument of he's in Patrick's weight class until he does put some pelts on the board.
The playoffs you can't argue.
Of course.
Well, but it's and then we can move on. This is why this is like a vexing conversation for me. Is we are trying to simultaneously say that these two players are super close. And then we have the biggest sample of any two guys in the history of the league playing each other in the biggest spots. And one guy has never outplayed him and never won. And in the last 2 years, it's when the Chiefs were vulnerable or bad or injured and on the road for one of them. And in both of those spots, Josh has had the ball in his hands with a chance to keep Mahomes on the bench, not a 13-second situation, go and win the game, and he didn't. And it takes 3 games in September for us to wipe all that away. And that, to me, is...
I think there's no argument for the postseason. Mahomes has outdueled him. Situationally, Mahomes is better, like all of that. But I also don't think you can just dismiss the regular season when it's not been close. It'd be one thing if Patrick was still playing great individually.
Are we talking about the gap right now? We're not talking about the gap,
historically,
the complete body of work. I thought we were talking about the gap of who the
gap
players
right now
are
has
right
to be
now.
close.
And what I will say, and then we'll move on, is the gap to me right now was exhibited 5 games ago, and that gap is at the moment insurmountable. That has always everybody I think always thought, at least early, maybe not late, but in the 20-aughts, that Peyton Manning was more talented than Tom Brady. He was the better prospect. He had the better numbers. He didn't have the dominant defense, all of it. But Peyton had to have that 2006 AFC Championship game comeback before people were allowed to say Peyton Manning is better than Tom Brady.
Really? Because early on, I mean, there were questions still about Brady's individual greatness. I mean, he had the 3 Super Bowls, but those were defensive driven. His numbers in some of them weren't phenomenal. Like at that point, I don't think it was like, oh, Brady's by far the best quarterback in the league.
And to me, Brady's a great example of a guy who continued to grow and develop as a quarterback. And it looks like Josh Allen is continuing to grow and develop as a quarterback. Whether or not this lack of turnover or controlling the turnover is sustainable, we'll have to see. But at least he's done it for a year plus a little bit this season.
And as much as this conversation offends you, you still think Josh is second.
Yeah, listen, I still think Josh is second, but I also think that until proven otherwise, we are in a Tiger versus the field situation. And what Josh is doing in the regular season is winning the Memorial. And we are talking about a guy with 10 majors and saying is a guy who has 0 actually as good as him. And I just